Okay, good morning everyone. There's still one or two people logging on, but we'll make a start now. As you know, we record these clinics, and we've had feedback from people saying that they're too small to see on their website, so we've come up with a different way of presenting these or providing the recordings, and that'll be via YouTube. So over the next few days, we'll be putting up in the support area of our website links to all of the past and this clinic. So those will be in high definition, so you can see everything that's going on, and they'll be complete. So there'll be a complete set of those available shortly. They're on YouTube, but you won't be able to search for them on YouTube. You need to have the link, and the link will be available to our supported customers on the support section of our website, www.edgeplm.com.au. Okay, this morning we're talking about, or this afternoon, and welcome everybody, we're talking about solid edge standard parts. The standard parts covers a fairly wide range, so let's look at specifically what we'll be looking at. We're looking at the solid edge standard parts mechanism, which is a library that's supplied with, or the machinery library is supplied with Solid Edge Classic. It's for common use partners, things like fasteners, bearings, pins, profiles, that nature of things that are standard items available from a wide range of suppliers. And they're based on international standards, so things like ANSI, DIN, ISO, and so on. Those standards are all represented in the library. We also optionally, there's an optional piping library available for those people who need to do piping, and that's a purchasable item. You can add the machinery library to Solid Edge Foundation at an extra cost if you wish to. The other thing we'll be looking at is the Solid Edge parts catalogue. Now these aren't quite standard parts, these are vendor parts, if you like. They're things like motors and clamps and industrial controllers and on and on and on. Seals, electrical parts, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these things. Now with version 4, ST4, this has been built into Solid Edge, the Solid Edge parts catalogue, and it's powered by a company called Cadence. And they provide everything in native Solid Edge format. We'll take a look at that as we go through. Okay, trying to keep this fairly short this morning. I'd like to get you to have an understanding of how the standard parts system works, the Solid Edge add-on works. This will make it easier for you to configure, load, and effectively use it. If we look at the diagram here, you'll see an area here called user. These are the users, the CAD users who will interact with the system. There's an administrator function. Usually a single administrator will look after how the database is configured. If we look at the buff colored boxes, these are the programs or applications. We've got our Solid Edge application down here, so we can see that interacts with everything. The main tool that's used for standard parts is the standard parts application itself, which converses obviously with Solid Edge, the database manager, and the file storage. And I'll talk about how that works in a moment. Then we've got the database administrator function, which is only used occasionally to configure. You might use it for things like adding your own parts into this database. We'll talk about that very briefly. This session doesn't cover how to do that, but I'll point you at the tools that allow you to do it. And we've got things like Part Editor, which is part of all of that. Now all of these interact with the two prime areas of the system. The first is the database, which is Microsoft SQL's Express by default, but you can use, if you've already got an existing SQL server, you can use that. As I said, we're not talking, or I probably didn't say, but I'll say now, we are not today talking about so much about loading the database. I'll cover that very briefly from a basic sort of load, but not configuring across multiple servers and enterprise networks and those sorts of things, which we can do. The database is how we derive all the links to the parts that are kept in the file storage. By default, in my case, I've got them loaded in on my C drive. Solid Edge standard parts is the folder that they're in. They may be on your server, which should have your server name and then SEE standard parts in this case. The tools that we supply allow you to set all this up, but it'll set itself up by default, as we'll see in a moment, on a local machine. Now, what we've got to realize, and I'll show you in another couple of slides, is that we don't have in the standard parts set, there's hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of nuts, bolts, screws, washers and those sorts of things. We don't put all of those on disk in one hit. We put a master file for each category, and the database, as we call up individual, let's say we're calling up a bolt of a certain type, an ISO bolt of a certain classification, and we call up a certain size, it will actually build the Solid Edge part file from the primitive using information in the SQL database to make that on the fly. Once we've built that and we call that up again, it will be called up a lot faster. You'll see this in action as we're going through. If we look in your program list under Solid Edge, you'll see under standard parts an administrator program. That's this one here, and a configuration wizard. The configuration wizard is only used when you're configuring new databases or your own setup of databases across different servers. We're not going to be talking about that in particular today. As I said before, there's different libraries available. What comes with the standard parts is a base example library, which is loaded with the standard parts administrator function. It's got maybe 100 or 200 parts in it. It allows you to configure the database. It allows you to add your own parts if you wish. If you're a classic user, you'll have the machinery library, which you can load into the standard parts system. Now, when you load the machinery library into the standard parts, the parts are not generated. What this means is that at that point you don't have any parts. They must go through a process called registration to be generated into the database. That actually creates all the primitive parts so that they're ready, and expands the database so that they're ready to be created on the fly. So when you call up a part for the first time, it gets generated. So when we register when we load we've got to go through a register process. As I said, we'll look at that in a moment. The parts are not generated. It's when we call them up they become generated, and they're placed in a category folder. So in my case, I have my standard parts loaded on C standard parts. Under that, it'll create a directory called standard parts, 3D standard parts with a version, and then the category. In this case, it's an ASME metric bolt. So that's every time when we call a part up, that's where it goes to for the first time. When we call that part up again, the database, the SQL engine, knows to look into this folder, and it will create it very quickly, or it'll pull it out very quickly. We can also optionally place these parts in working folders as we create them, or as we call them up. We'll look at that in a moment. So let's have a look at the basics of installing the standard parts. And I'm only going to go through this very quickly. When we install Solid Edge ST3 or above, this automatically installs the Microsoft SQL Express database. So that sets it up for us, and we don't have to do anything with SQL. When we install standard parts administration, and that's from the menu on your DVD, on your product DVD, when you put that in, the menu comes up, you'll see standard parts administration. You must select the master part file. So when you run that, you'll see master part files. You must open that up and select them. Then you select a location for where you're going to place your standard parts. In my case, I put them, as you can see, on a I put them on a I'll just come back to, sorry, I put them in C: standard solid edge standard parts. You have the option of where you want to put that, or you can let it default. Once that's loaded, once that's set up, you have a basic standard parts system running, and that's what I have on my machine right now. When you're ready, you can load the machinery library, and again, that's the same process. It's a separate CD, a DVD. In your DVD set, you've got multiple DVDs, and one of them has the standard parts libraries on it. It'll have the machinery library and the piping library. If you've got Classic, you have a license for the machinery library. You have to buy the license for the piping library, as I said. When you install that, you get this screen here, this dialog here. There's two things you've got to do. Is make sure that you install it to the same place as you put your master part files. As in my case, it would be C: solid edge standard parts. And you need to select the standards that you want. And you see we've got ANSI, GOST, on and on. In my case, I'd probably install JIS for the Japanese, DIN, and ISO, and maybe some UNI for the standards for the US steel sections. Once that's loaded, we've then got to start the standard parts administrator. And remember, that was back on this slide here. Under standard parts, we click on administrator, and we need to select the register parts icon. That's the second icon along here, and we'll get a dialog box. Now, just because we've just loaded the machinery library, we'll have this entry in here, so it knows it's got a database library in there ready to go. The option we would select is add from existing multiple part files, and it's going to add all of these. And when we say next, you'll see it go through a number of operations, and it will continue to add those over a period of time. It will take, depending on how fast your machine is, it'll take several hours for these to load. So don't try and do that in a hurry. Okay, that was just a brief introduction to loading, and I'm sorry for that. We're not going to go into that in great detail today because it takes too much time. If you have issues with that, again, talk to the support guys. They can help you through that. It is pretty straightforward. It sounds complicated. It's not particularly. Okay, the application itself comes up in the assembly mode. So when you're running an assembly, if you go to the parts library, you'll see an icon on here. Here's the icon. It's a bolt and a nut, I think, is the icon. You click on that icon, the library will come up. Now you've got three ways to visualize what's in the library. You've got a visual look at the libraries, as we see on the screen here. We've got a category. Here I've got US standards metric, so it's ANSI. ANSI metric. I've got bolt and screw opened, metric hex bolt, and ASME B18.2.3 .5M for metric. Or you can have a specification view, and this third view is the specification. I've got the same thing called up here. It's ASME B18 2.3.5 metric, and the fasteners that are available in there. So we select the thread and the length that we want, and it will create the fastener in this case. The icon we use, because we're in assembly, will be place. So we want to place that that bolt or whatever it happens to be. Now let's just take a quick look at that, because I think it'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. If I just want to bring in, and I'm not going to care about this assembly for the moment, I'm just opening something. I'm going to go to my parts library, click on the standard parts icon, and my standard parts user interface comes up. I'm in the category mode. Let's go to the visual mode, and I want to go up a level, so I can select at a top level whatever I want. I'm going to just look at something. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to go to flanged fittings. I'm going to pick up an ASME flanged fitting, and because I've only got a very basic set in here, I've only got the single one. I can preview it in here, my little preview screen, and I can, with my middle mouse button, rotate that around. Down in this box just below the preview, it tells me about the item that I've got, what class it is, which is used in pipe fittings, and so on. Just having a look at the options here. If we go to Tools, let's have a look at our options, and I'll talk about those in a moment, but that's where our options are for setting all this up. One of the things I'll point out while we're in the interface here, down in the bottom right, you'll see Copy to Working Folder. If I select that, it'll copy it to the working folder that I have by default, and if I look in, or actually let's do that in the next operation. What I'm going to do is just place that for now, and you see this generating dialog comes up. What it's doing is actually creating this part from a primitive part and giving it all the sizes to fit that classification, etc. And there it is. It just puts it in the interface. So let's just move that away somewhere. And you just use it's just a normal solid edge part. You just use your normal tools to place that. Fasteners will have capture fit on them, and I'll show you those in a moment. But it just gives you an idea of what the workflow is to create something. So going back to our slides briefly, let's have a look at those. Let's have a look at this working folder thing. We've got two options with that. We turn on Copy to Working Folder. We've got, it's with the standard parts library. In my case, it would be solid edge standard parts / working folder. So the parts that, as I call them up, that's where they get placed. They will also, they get copied in there. They also go into their classification area. So let's just take a very quick look at that. So I've just opened up my standard parts. We'll just go back one level, and you can see my working folder here. So anything I've created that's gone into my working folder will be there. Go back one level, I'll go to my standard parts. This is the version that's current, and we can sort the folders by date modified and things. But let's just have a look at something I've created recently, this ASME category, and that was that elbow that I just created. And it put, so the next time I call that I call up that particular elbow, it will get it from this folder. We can see a preview of it there. So that's how the file system works. Once you've generated a part, it will call up much quicker because it's available just in your normal file system. Now with my working folders, I've got a couple of options. As I said, it can go into the working folder area where my standard parts are, or it can be stored with the current assembly. That's the option. Excuse me. That's the option I'd normally use. Use the assembly folder, so where I've got the assembly, and make a copy of the parts into there, so that when I move that assembly about, if I want to take it somewhere else, the links to my parts, my standard parts, are all there. I can set up my preview. I've defaulted to the 3D preview, which we saw before, and you can turn on simplified parts, so that when you place a part, if you have simplification in there, it places it simplified. You can set up what action you want after you've placed a part. What I've got here is show again. So when I place a part, the dialog, this dialog, or the standard parts user interface will pop up again. We'll see that in a moment. We'll see how that works in a moment. Okay, let's. What I'm going to do is just take a simple frame example and show you what I mean. So I've got a blank assembly. Because I've got a file name for it already and a location, it's got a folder, so that when I use my standard parts, let's click on my standard parts and bring that up. There we go. What I want is structural shapes. I like my category a little bit better, so I think I was taking, let me just work out which one I was using, U and I. That's okay. So I'm using this set. What I'm going to do is to make a 50, and it automatically selects a 90 because it's the only one available, and a 5. I've got a preview of it here. So I'm going to say place. Now I've already generated this in the past, so it brings up another dialog box for me. How long do you want it? In this case I'm just going to make it 500. Now I haven't generated that before. There you go. So you see it generating. So it's actually building the part for me on the fly and putting it into the library, so it's copying it both here, so you see the part being built, and it'll be placed into my assembly. There we go, grounded, because it's the first part in the assembly. You notice the standard parts comes back. This time I want to have a 40 by 60, and I'll place that, and I'll make that 200 long. Just say OK. And that's ready to go. So what I'm going to do is just pick that end there, mate it onto there, line those, and like so. Okay, and let's have another one of the you need to open those up to get back to what we're allowed, and I wanted a what was it, 50, wasn't it? 50 by 90. That should be available. I can't do those. Actually, if I go off to something else, come back. Okay, place that. The length on that's 500 again. And it'll pop that in fairly quickly, because it just makes the length each time that I need, so it doesn't have to build the whole thing, it's just making the length. And we will assemble that. It's pretty straightforward, and you notice that again when I finish, the standard parts comes back up, so I could add more shapes in there. For the moment I'll just cancel out of that, so let's cancel the standard parts, and we will move on, have a look at the next thing that we're going to have a look at. Have a look at my slides. Let's look at placing a fastener, which is probably something that you'd more typically do, and this is pretty straightforward. Again, back to solid edge. Let's get rid of that. If I wanted to place a fastener into this, so to go through there. So again, to my parts library, bring it up. In this case, I will pick a something out of the ISO or DIN. Bolt screw, one of those. I need something that's 55 millimeters long. I know the hole happens to be an M10. I know that that's 40 across there. I could have measured that. We'll just place that. So you'll notice now this has come in with the automatic relationships placed there. All I have to do is pick that, pick the hole that I want to put it in. Okay, that's pretty nice. Come back here. Now I want not a bolt and screw, I want a washer, a plain washer. Scroll down this one here, 10 millimeter, place that. It's going to go onto there, and it goes around there. Wait for that to come back, and I want a nut, hexagon nut, that one will do, and I want an M10. Place that on the washer and around there. That's pretty neat, and the interface comes back automatically, so just let's close that for the moment. So we see here it's generated the parts. It will have placed the parts in the same folder that I have this assembly. Now if I wanted to do that again, I could copy all of these, but there's a better way of doing that. So let's get rid of all of those, and we have the last thing I was going to show you here, place a fastener system. We see a fastener system here, and it automatically fills. So back to solid edge, There's an icon on your home toolbar called Fastener System. It's up in your assemble area of the ribbon bar. So I'll just hover over that for you so you can see it. We click on that, we get a toolbar up. So we've got some selections here. We can do a single entity. We can do a top hole by plane, so we can put fasteners into slots and those sorts of things. And I'm going to pick all on face. So I'm going to pick the first circle. You notice all of the holes that are the same size as the first one I picked are selected. I OK that. It now wants to know the depth of the hole, so I just pick any of these at the back, and it will take me into the Fastener Systems interface. Because I've used the DIN standard before, I'm going to pick up a DIN. I've got let's have a look here. It's ISO 4014 is the bolt that it's got available there. I could accept that, or I could say no, I want to have a look at some more, so I'm just going to go back up to the bolts and screws, and I've got another one here that will fit. You notice it's got M10, M6 and M8. They're the three sizes it considers will fit in that hole. If I had a 12mm hole, it would give me an M12, maybe an M8 and an M10. And it will give you three sizes for any hole that you select, because you may have a 10mm hole, but you want to put an 8mm bolt in it, just to give you a bit of slack for assembly. Okay, in this case I want to pick that one, so I'm going to say add that fastener to the stack. So that's the first thing that goes in. Now I want the top stack components, in other words what goes under the head, and I want a washer there. I just want a plain washer, normal series, just drill down to it. I'll take that one. I can use a 10 or a 12. I want to add that fastener. Then I want to go to the bottom stack, and it's picking up the bolt again, but I still want to have the plain washer, same one there again. Let's go back and say, oh, we'll do that, that's right. Pay no attention. If you get these the wrong way around, and I'll show you in a moment, go to my hexagon nut, this one, and add the fastener. You notice I've got the bolt, a washer at the top, a washer at the bottom, and then the nut. I could put those the other way around, so I could put the nut before the washer, which doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't do that. So I can alter those quite easily. So all I need to do now is say OK, and it does it. Because I'd already generated those, I'd used those in the past, it came in instantly. So you can see there it's just a it's a group replication, and there's my fastener system. You can look at those yourself in some detail a bit later on, but it gives you an idea of what's going on. So let's close this down. The standard parts system is pretty easy to use. It really is. One final thing I'm going to look at here is just editing some of the properties on there. I see some questions coming up. You know, I can only get 6 and 12mm. Yes, I'll explain it. The reason is that you haven't added the rest of the libraries. You haven't added the machinery library, and you haven't registered that library. Once you register that library, you'll get a bigger set. You may have thought you'd installed it, but it still needs to be registered. That was on my earlier slide. Okay, a couple of things here. There's a lot of information, and I'll go to the second point first. On the standard parts system, there's a user guide that was redone for ST3. It hasn't changed for ST4, so you can use the ST3 one. And it's in the documentation area, which is support.industrysoftware.automation.siemens.com, docs, SE for docs, and ST3. If you log on to you'll need your web key, your Siemens web key to get in there. If you log on to the support.ugs.com area and go to documents, look for solid edge documents, you'll find this same list there as well. Now, a couple of other things I said we can do with this. Let's just start up the I'm going to go to the administrator, so it's all programs, Solid Edge ST4 standard parts administrator, and here's my administrator. Let's look at some of those screws that we were using before. Now you can see I've got the part name, whether or not they're generated. So those are generated, these are not generated, and as we scroll across we can see the nominal length, the thread, the diameters, those sorts of things, who generated them, so that's my login, I generated those, a title, might have a category field in there that's not filled, and we've got, these are the Solid Edge properties. All of these properties are exposable, but here we've got a document number. Now let's say, for instance, we want to put some document numbers into this, our own part numbers. Well, we can do that quite easily. What I'm going to do is to just select, let's say 4 of those will do. I right click and I'm going to say edit the file properties, and I get another dialog box comes up. You'll see that pop up in a second on your screens, and with the same information in it, but this allows me to edit. So if I look at the document number field, what I'm going to put in there is, let's say A-123- something. This one might be 1, and so on. But what I want to do is to Control C for copy. I go down to the next one, Control V, down to the next one, Control V, down to the next one, Control V. So, and the next one, Control V. That's fine. The top one here is going to be -1. Go down to the next one, just click in there, -2, down to the next one, -3, down to that one, -4, down to that one, -5. So I can fill in all these fields in that way if I want to. I could also, if I wanted to, generate them. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say apply and change the read-only files to, yes, those are the ones already generated. They're stored as read-only. This takes a minute or two for it to fire up the database and get into to modify things. It's doing quite a bit of work, but it's quite efficient. So we'll see that start to change in a moment. Now you can set up these properties to be anything you like. So it's done that for us now, and if we scroll across, we will see, there we go, I'll undo it, you can see those document numbers. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to generate some of these. I just generate one of them. I right click on it, but I could multiply accept them, I could select them. I right click and I just click on generate. What that's going to do is actually create the real CAD data for that. Again, that takes a little while for it to do it, but it's a way. There we go. You'll see, if you're really quick, you'll see Solid Edge flash up in the background because it uses Solid Edge to create the part, and it's actually creating that part, setting all the sizes, and it's just about done. There we go, it's done, and you'll see generated for that part now. Okay. One more thing while we're in here, I just thought I'd show you. If we click on one of these and we look at the part editor, this is another edit program. I can't make changes to this, but this is the information that's in this part. It has category information, which is lengths, thread diameters, threads, and those sorts of things, which categorizes that. So all that information in there. If it was a piping fitting, we'd have piping information in there, but for fastener systems, this is how the database automatically selects which fasteners we're going to use for which holes, the lengths and the diameters, etc. These values are all described in that user guide book that I referenced before. So you can set up your own parts that will work with that catalog system, automatic catalog system. Okay, moving along, our time's running on. This is the Solid Edge parts catalog. Here I've got, and this is what I'm going to generate for us, is a little toggle clamp. You start from the Solid Edge start screen. You need to register. You can search for parts. There's different ways of getting the model, and my advice is register and have an experiment. See what's in there. Have a good look. Okay, let's just go straight to it. So in Solid Edge, on the Solid Edge startup screen, in the bottom right box, favorite links, there's the Solid Edge catalog parts. Click on that. It will bring up a screen, fit it onto this area here, make it a little bit bigger. So we're now getting onto the Cadenas website where all this stuff is, and you can see there's a list here of, you know who they are better than I do. They're all the manufacturers of these parts. You're only in, when you first come in, you're only in a guest mode. You need to log in. To get a login, you need to register. So if we register, it takes a second or two for this to come up. When we register, you need your email and all of those sorts of things. It's free, so don't be scared to do it. Just go ahead and register. Now I'm going to log in when that comes back, and because I've set it up to remember my login, it knows who I am and my password. Hit the login button. Now there's some things that we can do here. Once you've logged in, you want to select your CAD formats. I've selected, you can select from a lot of different CAD formats. I've boiled it down to Solid Edge, and then I have three options. I can insert the model directly into the assembly that I'm working on. I can download a CAD model, so just a normal download type thing, and put it in a folder somewhere. Or I can send it via email, so I can get the system to email it to me or to somebody else. Once you've set up what you want to do here, and I've got the insert CAD model, you save the preferences and close. Now, I could browse around for stuff, and I'll have a quick look and show you some of that. So I want to have a look in this ABB, so control products, low voltage stuff. You've got connection devices or control products. So you're just sort of drilling down through it. I want contactor starters, and go into that again, so it refines that. And then I've got all these different contactor starters and those sorts of things. So I pick one, it'll give me information on those, and there's a range of those and so on. Now what I really want to do is I want to search, and in this case I want to search for a toggle clamp. I believe that's what I want to search for. Yep. Hit search, and it'll come back with a large number of toggle clamps. There's 394. Now I could refine that search, or I could just sort of march through to look for what I want. What I want, for instance, happens to be around about here somewhere. I think it's this one, the 202. Yes, let's select that. Yep, okay, that's the one I want. Now I can get an animation of that. Just click on the animation button up here, and it'll give me like an animated PDF type thing. You can get thumbnail drawings if they've got them, other information. You can get PDF if they've got PDF data. You can download all of that, like the catalog data. But what I want to do is to come down here and say generate the CAD model. And that's precisely what it's doing. So it's generating it on their server, wherever they are, in Europe somewhere, and it's actually bringing that model down. You can see the little timer going there. Now this will be running a little bit slow because of the webinar setup that I've got, and oh no, it's there. So how do I want to deal with that? I don't need that one anymore, so I'll delete that one. It was one I brought down before. I want to go to the direct integration. So I click on that. The first time you do it, it's got to start a bit of stuff up. He says, yep, there we go. So it's that's the model I want to bring in, and I click on the by integration, and you'll see some screens start up. There's a Java screen because it's a Java application. Starts up. Takes a second or two to start up the first time. So if you're bringing in several things, you don't have to redo this. And it's transferring the model, and it says, okay, what version do you want? And you notice there's 19, 20, ST, ST2, ST3. There isn't any ST4 because it hasn't changed. ST3 and ST4, the data structures haven't changed, so we can bring an ST3 model straight in. So I'll choose that. Now, there's another dialog comes up, says, where do you want to put it? I've done that, I can browse for a dialog. I just say, or browse for a folder. I just say OK, and it's transferring the model into the CAD system. Now, if you could see my dual screens, you'd see this CAD system doing things in the background. Oh, there it is. It's bringing in parts. It's actually done it all, because I've done it before, so it's a little bit quicker. Now, when it brings parts in, they are, here's the toggle clamp that we ordered. When it brings things in, they come in as released. So the status on them is released, and hence we get this, because that's what you get. You don't want to be able to change that, because it's what it is. What I am going to do, because they don't do it for some reason, cancel.